Hey everyone, it's Amy from Two Oaks Farmstead, and I I'm kind of multitasking right now. I'm out here in the greenhouse, and I've got to get the rocket mass heater going because we're going to have a freeze tonight, and so I'm going to stay out here for a little while and kind of fire it up and keep it going. But um, I wanted to do something. I wanted to do it for a little bit. I keep getting a lot of questions about homeschooling. Now, I am a homeschooling mom. I have been for about 2 decades now. So it's kind of just a part of my life. And I love it. I absolutely adore it. I would never go back. But I get a lot because of the fact that everyone knows that I do that, and I've done it for a long time. I get a bunch of questions. And I just thought that it would be a good idea. I mean, I still try to answer questions individually. I will always try to do that. But I thought it might be helpful if I would just kind of do like a little video series about homeschooling, the ins and outs, and just kind of some of my thoughts on some of the different parts of it, especially trying to answer some of the questions. Now, I'll give you just a little bit of background on the on what we do. Um, I've been, like I say, I've been homeschooling for a couple of decades. I've got a total of 5 kids. Two of mine are already grown. My oldest is 26. He graduated when he was 16, and my second oldest, my daughter, is she's 21. She graduated when she was 17, and I've got two more that are in the house currently homeschooling, and then the other one is my stepson, and he we don't get to homeschool him, but we we have a. I guess I've kind of gotten this down to a science. When I first started out homeschooling, it was out of necessity. For one, we were moving from our small rural area into a very big city, and it wasn't something that I wanted to put my children into. I didn't want them to go into that school situation. So I made the decision right then that I was going to homeschool. And that very first year, I tell everyone, I will admit this freely, because I think it's actually helpful for new homeschooling parents, especially, that they know that it's not all peaches and cream, especially right off from from the beginning. And that first year, I thought I was going to strangle my children, and I'm pretty sure they were probably counting on the same thing. they, we all had a rough time for, I would say, the majority of that first year. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I was under the impression, as most new homeschooling parents are, that homeschooling had to be public school at home, that we had to keep that same schedule and we had to do the exact same things that they did. But honestly, that really defeats the purpose. And I was completely wrong. And as soon as I finally got that through my head, things really became very smooth. I eased up, and the kids started enjoying it. They could breathe again, and um, from that point, I've really learned a lot over the years. I mean, it's been a lot of years. There's a lot of time there to learn some stuff, but that's what I wanted to talk to everyone about. I wanted to answer some of the questions that I have gotten, and I wanted to put your mind at ease if you are someone who is looking to homeschool, or maybe you've just started and you're about to pull your hair out. I just want you to be aware that homeschooling, honestly, it's not public school. It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be anything like public school. We teach our children in a whole host of different ways. We we teach our children a lot of different things. And I believe, at least for those of us who really want this lifestyle, it works out so much better. I can tell you that my children are so much better off for it. My oldest was in public school. I was in business locally, and it's just so involved in everything, organizations and all that. And so early on, my oldest was in school for a couple of years in public school. And my daughter was in public school just for 1 year, pre-K. And honestly, you could really see it in my oldest because he was in school for, I want to say it was about 3 years. And you could really see a huge difference in that. And I'm not trying, and I will not berate or degrade any public school teacher. It's a calling. I believe that you have to be a special person to be a really good teacher. Now, I will also say that not everyone's a good teacher. I had some pretty poor teachers, and I've known some pretty poor teachers. So not everyone's a great teacher, but there are some really terrific ones out there that are doing it for the right reason. But having said that, the person who loves your children the most is you. So you are really the best person to be making those kind of decisions and taking them through these learning moments. You know your child. You know your child better than anybody else could. And so you have the ability to see behind what, like a public face would be for a child in school. You know what your children are like. You have the ability to learn what your children's learning styles are. And in future videos, we're going to definitely go into learning styles a lot more deeply because I believe they are so incredibly important for homeschool parents to understand about their children. It makes such a difference to be able to teach to your child's learning style. I better put some more wood in here. But okay, so I wanted to talk about, like I say, about some of the questions that I get most often. Now, one of the questions that I get most often is, how do you start? Well, that's actually, it could be different in different situations. It certainly could be different in different states. I'm in Oklahoma, which I personally consider to be one of the best states in the union, but it is certainly one of the best for homeschooling. We don't have to deal a lot with government intrusion. We, as parents, have the ability to mold our children's learning, and it shows. It really, you can see it in test scores and in their future, how they move through their future. But that's for another video. But if you are, for instance, in Oklahoma, and you can check with your Department of Education in different states, but in Oklahoma, if your child is currently enrolled in school and you want to pull them out to start homeschooling, then all you are required to do is write a letter to the school district and explain that you are pulling your child out and you will be homeschooling them. Now, I have known of some families, some parents who they tried to do that and the school they weren't really having it. They were giving them problems about getting records and that kind of thing, which actually is not legal. So you can fight that and it's okay. But when you start, honestly, it's a matter of knowing where your child is in their schoolwork. And as a parent, you should know that. You should, even if they're in public school, as a parent, you should be paying attention and you should know where your child is on their learning level. But if you don't, you can get started and let your child show you. Especially if they're young. If you're pulling them out when they're young, you get them started on some of the basics, and you will very soon learn what their where they're at, what their level is. But getting started, I would say it is literally just a matter of jumping in with both feet and finding a love of learning together. Now, let's see. One of the other questions that I get a lot is about curriculum. Now, there are so many ways to answer this question. Now, since I've been doing this for so long, people ask me, "Okay, what's the curriculum that you're using?" It would take me forever to go through that. And I have gone through so many different kinds of curriculums over the years with my various kids, and I'm still going through different ones. But I can tell you that what I ended up settling on, that kind of the system that I ended up settling on, is basically an eclectic mix, because all of my kids learn in different ways. Like I say, their learning styles are different. So the curriculum, I believe, needs to fit the child. But also, I believe in allowing a child to learn what it is that they want to learn. Now, obviously, if they don't want to learn math, they still have to. We've had to go through that before. But you have to allow them to be able to choose some of the things that they learn. That's one of the biggest benefits of homeschooling, is that they get to choose some of the stuff that they want to learn. And when a child gets to choose, and they get to learn what they want to, they become more excited about it. So one of my, let's see, a couple of years ago, my kids, my two youngest boys that I'm homeschooling, they chose zoology. And we went and picked out the curriculum, and we started going through that. And that's because it was something that they chose. They were really excited about it. They wanted to do it. Now, they still had to do their math, but they really were excited about being able to learn zoology. And that's just one example. My kids get to choose so many different things. And when I tell you that, let me be more clear. When my kids graduate high school, they graduate with probably 50% more credits, maybe more than that actually, than the state requires, because I'm allowing them to find things that interest them, and we are using that. We are going into that and getting that, using that as a curriculum, using it. Sometimes it's an elective, or sometimes we add more credits in the subjects that are required. If I have a history buff, we're gonna end up with more history credits than the state requires. So it's just kind of one of those things. I want my kids to always be learning. That's actually another video that I'm planning, is working on raising a child with a love of learning. We, as parents, don't have to teach our children every little thing. And honestly, even if you think back to public school, most of you probably went to public school. If you think back and all the classes that you went through, really be honest and answer this question. Do you remember all of that stuff? Do you remember all of the things that you learned in biology and in history and all of that? I would be willing to bet good money that the majority of you do not remember the majority of what you learned in high school. So I would say that one of the things that you want to focus on when you're homeschooling is, instead of teaching every single little thing, it's teach your child to love to learn. Teach them where to learn. I saw one of the favorite things that I've seen. I've used it over the years. We don't need to teach our children what to think. We need to teach our children how to think. And that is so incredibly important. And it is the basis of what I do as a homeschooling mom. So that's one of the things. I don't think these specific curriculums, are that important. There's so many out there, really. You do a search online. There are curriculums that are individual subjects. There are curriculums that you buy one curriculum and the entire thing has all the subjects that you need for a given grade or whatever. And there's a lot that you can do there. And I would also suggest Mardel bookstore. It's like a Christian bookstore. They have a really great selection, wonderful selection of all different kinds of homeschool curriculum. So that's actually where we get a lot of our various pieces. Okay, so another question that I get, okay, why I homeschool? I'm asked that a lot. Not necessarily by other people who are looking to homeschool, but by other people who are like, you homeschool? And I get asked why. And I believe that, and I've talked to a lot of different homeschooling families, I believe that every homeschooling family has a different reason. Everyone's different. All families, they come to it for a specific reason. Now, I get people who contact me a lot over potentially homeschooling their kids, wanting information. How do I do this? And I always ask them, what's your thinking? What's going on? Why is it that you're all of a sudden, wanting to change? Is there something? Because that'll help me to guide them. But a lot of them recently are bullying situations. I understand that. Who would want to keep their kid in a public school when they're in the situation of being bullied? So I get that. There are a lot of families like myself who we homeschool. Part of the reason that we homeschool is for, and I don't like to call it religious. I am a Christian. It is a lot of people do it for religious reasons. I don't like to call it religious. I like to call it, maybe it's faith, maybe it's something that I would rather my child be raised holy in an environment where I can control their surroundings. I do not know what's going on while they're at public school. I don't know who their influences are or what their influences are influencing them on. And as a mom, I need to be able to be on top of that, especially in these times right now. It's something that I need to be absolutely on top of. And I can't do that while they're in public school. So for me, that's one of my biggest things. But then also, we can learn faster. That's one of my favorite things about homeschooling. And I'll admit, I have lots of favorite things about homeschooling. I truly love it. And so do my kids. But we learn faster. There's only 2 people in my class. So, I'm not bound by state regulations. I am not bound by 30 children in a classroom. So for us, it is a really good situation because my kids are pretty bright. I will admit that freely. My kids are really bright, and we're able to move through certain subjects really fast. And where they know it, they've got it left and right. It's done. There are some other subjects, however, math for 2 of them, that take a little longer because it's just not their thing. It's not their favorite subject, and it's just numbers are not their thing. But that's okay because I don't mind taking 2 years to do algebra if that's what they need to be able to fully understand it. And I'll tell you this, my kids get straight A's, and here's why. I do not allow them to get anything less. because if they do not understand it, we have the ability to back up and do it again so that they can take a little more time and understand it. We don't move on until they fully understand what they were trying to learn. So that's one of the freedoms that I love about homeschooling as well. Another freedom that I love about homeschooling is the fact that we do have freedom. We have the ability to choose when we do school. Now, some families that I've talked to, some families that come to me asking questions, mom and dad both work, but they need to take their kid out of school and they want to do homeschooling. So one of their questions is always, what do we do about that? Who cares? That's fine. Do it at night, because it's not a necessity that schooling happens from 8 to 3. That doesn't matter at all. And honestly, think about public school these days. You go to school from 8 to 3, and then you do homework from 3:30 till bedtime. So what does it matter? My kids do school mostly in the mornings. My youngest is not particularly an early riser morning person, and he has to kind of get going in the morning before he starts his school. That way his head's clear and he's ready to learn. My other one, my 14-year-old, he's an early riser. He's popping up out of bed super early in the morning. He's like his mama. And he can get going right away, and he can be done just like that. So it really depends on the kid. It depends on what best suits them. And it also depends on what mom and dad have the ability to do. So you guys get to set your own schedule, and that's what's wonderful about homeschooling. One of the other things that's wonderful about homeschooling. Plus, I mean, the freedom to just up and do a road trip, learning on the go. How awesome is that? If you're learning about the Civil War and you take a trip through the South to some of the Civil War battle sites, what better way to learn about that than to be there on site? I mean, what a wonderful freedom that we have as homeschooling families. But one of the other questions that I get is, how has it all worked out? Well, all I'm going to say about that is my oldest, who is 26, graduated at 16. Now, I also, side note, I require all of my kids, this is part of our homeschool, I require all of my kids to go to the local technology center during their high school years and learn a trade. It's necessity. I'm not huge on college, especially these days. Most of the time, unless your intent is to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, most of the time, kids are going into college, spending a fortune, actually going into a fortune of debt, and coming out with a degree that doesn't get them a job. So it's not necessarily worth it, and just depending on what their interests are. However, if you learn a trade, at least at the very minimum, you've got something with job skills to fall back on. And I think that's very important. Plus, I think it's a really, really good responsibility thing. So all of my kids have to do that. And my oldest, like I say, he graduated at 16. He took the welding course at our local technology center, and he ended up getting out and working in his field. Now, he has since gone past that, and he wants to add that back to his business, but he owns his own construction business, as do myself and my husband. I taught Christian, my oldest, I taught him construction when he was 12 and 13, and that's something that he ended up going into. And so he's working in that trade, in that field, and he has his own business doing that. And then he plans to add welding back to his business. So my next child graduated at 17. She took the auto services course at the technology center and became a certified mechanic, and a really good one. She has worked in her field since she got out of school. Now she is currently about to have a baby, so she's not working right now. But my next one, he's 14 years old. He will be graduating at the latest by the time he turns 16. And he will be starting the technology center this next semester, and he's wanting to go into HVAC. What a great area to go into. There will always, in the South, be need for air conditioners. And that's what he's wanting to go into. It's a great paying job once you get through the training and everything. And so that's something that he's doing. But like I say, he'll be done with school by 16. So, I mean, when you ask how it has worked out really well. And I would put my kids up against anyone. My kids learn a lot. We don't just slough off school. And I will say this, we do school year round. That's up to you. That's a choice that every homeschooling family has the ability to make. I made the choice a long time ago to do school year round. We take breaks. Don't get me wrong. It's not an everyday thing. But we get to take our breaks when it's best for our family. And we don't stop for the 3 months of the summer and then have to start back up and go back over what they learned last year. That's just wasteful in my feelings. But so when I get asked that question, I can tell you that it has worked out very well. And I'm very proud of my kids, what they're able to do, what they do on a regular basis. And it's such a joy for me as a homeschooling mother to be able to watch these milestones. Watching my kids when they're really, really having trouble with a particular subject, and then all of a sudden a light goes off and they get it. Man, I'm talking about if I had pom-poms, I'd be shaking them right then. It's a wonderful thing as a homeschooling mother to be able to go through all of that with my children. And I would not give it up for anything. Okay, so anyhow, I will still be around to answer any questions that anyone may have about homeschooling. You can PM me, email me, it doesn't matter, whatever. I will answer whatever questions that I can. And maybe if I get enough of the same question, I can do another video to answer them. I do have a whole list of videos that I'm going to be doing on this in little parts of this subject about socialization. That's always a huge question, typically from non-homeschooling people. There's so many different areas that I would really like to go into more depth with you and give you some more information than just what I can do right here in just little tidbits in this video. So please pay attention and look out for that. Subscribe to the channel and hit those notifications so that you can be notified when the next one comes out. I'm going to be trying to get them out very regularly, so all of that information will be out there and available for people who are indeed looking to do this homeschool life that we have. And on a side note, for the people who are being forced into homeschooling right now because of the current shutdowns of everything, I am planning to do some videos that might be helpful there as well. And I'm working on that, and I'll get that out on all my social media when I have a good plan in place. You guys have a great weekend, and I hope everything goes well if you're working on your homeschooling.